welcome to the Balance Ballerinas podcast, Andrea. It is just such a pleasure to have you here. As I just said off camera, I have been following you for such a long time. So when your publicist reached out and was like, Andrea's releasing a book. Would you like a copy? Would you like to talk to her? I was like, absolutely.
I
Um,
was so excited to hear that. I love that.
Yeah, it's funny. Like when I first started my business when I was 23, I was really looking for people that inspired me and sort of led the way. And I have two particular people that were pivotal in that time. One of them was you, and one of them was Lorna Jane. And I feel like you're very similar in regards to very positive around business and health and well-being. And so, thank you. So, without knowing
Thank you. Thank you. I appreciate that.
Now, like I said, I've admired your journey for such a long time, from dancer to global entrepreneur. I'm sure in other interviews you don't get to talk a lot about dance, so that is
I
what
don't. I'm so excited to be here for this. It's
that
great.
that
Bringing it
is.
all back.
Yes, that is what we're going to talk about. So I do love to start my interviews off with, especially for someone like yourself, where does the dancing come into play? So when did you start? How old were you? What was your vibe? Let's go.
Yes. Okay. Well, I can't wait for all the dancers to read this book because it is so incredible that when you are a dancer, and even after you leave the professional career behind, or you're not dancing on a regular basis any longer, it is just incredible how dance tends to weave its way through everything that you do in life, every facet of your life, the way you approach challenges, the way you take on tasks, the way you schedule your life, you know? So you'll see there's so many references to stories in my book of how dance has just been such a foundational element to who I am today and how I've grown my business, how I parent my children, how I approach life in general. So I feel like once a dancer, always a dancer, and it never goes away. Um, and a lot of the practices that I developed in this book, for example, one of the practices that I talk about quite often is breath. It's one of the chapters in the book is all about intentional breath work and focused breath work and how breath work can be such a pivotal tool. And I talk about how as a dancer, we use breath intuitively, but yet when I was growing up, dance wasn't breath wasn't taught. It wasn't taught to use your exhale on the exertion or to really optimize your breathing or use your breathing to optimize your performance. And so it's interesting how, as I was writing this book, how many dance stories came up. And I was like, oh, well, when I was dancing in this story. So you'll see it's just weaved throughout the entire book.
I'm not surprised. So, when you started when you were three, weren't you?
I did. I started dancing when I was 3.
What were your genres? You did comps, didn't you? Explain.
Yes, I did. Yes. Well, I started dancing 2 reasons. One, my mom said, like many, I would never stop moving, right? And I was always moving and be bopping around. But also, when I was that age, when I was young, I had slightly internally rotated legs. And so I had to wear special shoes and braces. And my mom would always rub my feet at night because she felt bad. I always had these hard, wooden shoes on. And the doctor had suggested, hey, you might want to put her in dance because that's really good for external rotation. So that was one of the reasons I went in. So I started with ballet. But then through dance, I did all of it. But my main genre I did was jazz. Like jazz was my main thing. So I did some, backup dancing and touring, and everything was always just jazz. But I did it all. I did it all. With Disney, I danced on point, and although that wasn't my forte by any means, ballet was the foundation for me. But I was never a ballerina.
I'd love you to share the story in the book about the point shoes and the audition. I
Yes.
think it's a great story for several reasons. But yes, let's share that one.
Yes, that is one of those moments that I look back on and realize and just have such a strong appreciation for my parents because first of all, my parents, supported my dancing from a very young age. My mother was the mom she wasn't a dance mom. She really wasn't. She supported me from the back, very quietly in the very back. But she also was the mom that did everyone's hair and made the costumes and schlepped me to dance, which was about a 45-minute drive every single day. Um, and this particular audition, was my first professional dance audition. I had gone to college. I was a year into school. I thought, okay, dance is over, right? Like I didn't move to New York or anything. I wasn't pursuing a professional career. I was in Michigan. There weren't a tremendous amount of opportunities. And but I was still, looking at all of the auditions on a regular basis. And I came across the audition for Disney, and it happened to be in Toronto, Canada, the next morning. Now I lived about 5 hours, 5.5 hours from this area, and I saw the audition sometime in the afternoon. And so I called my mom. I'm like, Mom, there's an audition for Disney tomorrow. She's like, oh my God, okay, well, call your father. So I called my dad. I'm like, Dad, there's an audition for Disney tomorrow. It's in Toronto. And he's like, I'm leaving work. And got in the car, came home. My parents packed up the car, got a hotel. We drove for 5 hours, got there late at night, and woke up and I did the audition the next day. I made it to the end, and I got the call back. And um, the casting director had said, hey, do you do point work? And I was like, I had not done point work in years, and I was never really great at it to begin with. And I'm like, yeah, of course, yeah,
Yeah.
great on point, of course. And he's like, okay, great. Can you send me a video of you doing some, point work? Because the role that we have you in mind for is, a pas de deux, and it's the ballerina. It was a magic show, and she does all this stuff on point. I later found out I had to be on point, like folded in half or like being cut in half and all these crazy things. But point being, I was like, oh my God. So once again, I call my dad. I'm like, Dad, I've got to do a video. Now I was 19. I'm now 44. We didn't have cell phones with video cameras. Like it wasn't a thing. My dad had to get a camcorder. So once again, my dad was like, I'm coming home. And he left work, met me at the dance studio where I was teaching dance. And I thank God I found my point shoes like in some old box. I'm like, please fit, please fit, please fit. Put them on. I did my bit and I sent it in. And I was like, okay, I still got it. I got this. So I sent it in. I FedExed it that night. So it would arrive the next morning in LA. And he called me the next afternoon and he's like, Andrea, you have the job. It's like, oh my God, this is amazing. So you got the video, you watched it. And he's like, nope, didn't watch it. And I'm like, what do you mean you didn't watch? He's like, I didn't need to. I knew you had the talent. He's like, I just wanted to. He's like, now I know you have the diligence. And I was like, whoa, okay.
And I love that. And I think it's also very clever of him. So clever.
So
Because
clever, right?
I see a lot of students who will get to that final call, that last push, and then there's just that little something extra, and it's the 1% that will go that extra mile. And so you might have 10 people you're picking from, and probably one of them will go that extra mile, get the video there within less than 24 hours, and then that makes the rest of the decision easy.
I think that that's very true. So that makes me think I was just talking to a friend about the Thanksgiving Day halftime show, and I did a performance, and Enrique Iglesias was the performer. My kids don't even know who he is anymore. I was trying to tell them about that. They're like, "Who's that?" I'm like, "It was a big deal." And so we were, I was in Michigan, yeah, and we were auditioning. There were hundreds and hundreds of girls there, because it's a big halftime show performance. They were hiring hundreds, but there were only four that made it to the stage. And I remember during that audition, I was like, I gotta stand out. Like these dancers are all amazing. Like there's equal talent across the board. So they had us doing partner work. And I remember I partnered with this guy. And as I was Shanaeing and obviously spotting towards that direction, I decided I'm not going to spot to where I'm going. I'm going to spot my partner. And so as I was turning to the right, I was spotting to the left.
Mm.
And they stopped and they were like, hey, and they brought me over in front of everyone. I will never forget it, the casting director. And he's like, you just did something special. I just watched you watch him, like, because it was Hero. That I can be a hero,
Yeah.
baby. That song was like that loving. So I'm like, oh, and I'm turning. And he was like, you're on stage. And that was it. That like locked me in. Just that one little thing, as you said, that like 1% that just stood out. So it's like you got to just find ways to authentically stand out and, try to deliver what you're trying to show them that you're capable of.
Absolutely. I love that. I think some listeners will adore that stories and it will really resonate. So now we did touch on breath work, but I already had this in my list of questions because it's a big part of my practice. I'm constantly walking around my adult ballet classes or, especially
Mm,
just with our school age students, it's like take a breath. It's all
mm.
good. We're at ballet, and when I had some teacher training I had to do when the assessor came to watch, she goes, I started counting how many times you said the word breathe to all your students. She goes, I don't think
Uh,
I've ever sat in a class before and heard that happen, heard that said so much. And I was like, really? Is that not what everyone does? So, um, I'd love you to touch on breath work awareness being part of your life as not just a dancer, but as a mum, as a businesswoman, as a human being in the world. And can you share even any little tips in regards to breath?
Yes, absolutely. And I love the fact that you're teaching that. I wish that we had more education around the power of breath, specifically for dancers, not just from the physical component, but from a mental component. I feel like it can really center you physically and mentally. And I feel like it can bring you to a state of direct, like, control. So when you focus on your breath and your control of your breath, your turns are stronger, your jumps are higher, your pliés are more engaged. Like everything can be better. So if anyone's listening to this and you have not tried breath work and you want to take your dancing to the next level or your teaching and education to the next level, learn it. It's very simple. It doesn't take too long. I apologize. I forgot to put my dog in his crate and there's somebody at the door. So I apologize. I always put him in the crate when I do a podcast, but I just completely forgot. But anyhow, so breath work. I again told you I remember Disney audition. That audition is when I was like, oh my God, I started to get a little anxiety and I started to focus on breath. But it was later in life when after I became a Pilates instructor, I started to realize really the science behind breathing and the real power behind it. And it is just one of the most incredible tools that we underutilize. It is quite literally built within our entire being. And we don't have to download an app. You don't have to purchase anything. You don't have to really take a lot of time to become certified in it. You just have to do a little bit of education, read my book or go online and watch some videos and figure out what breath pattern or breath work resonates with you. So I share a few different options in the book. One that is my favorite, and I call it inhale and extend because I started to do this as I was building the extend bar business and coming into some challenging times in my life personally. Um, so I do this, oh gosh, I do this probably 5, 6 times a day, but without fail, I do it every morning and every evening. Like I don't get out of bed without doing a breathwork series and stretching, and I don't go to bed without doing a breathwork series and stretching. Like it is that is my meditation, and it is also what has really allowed me to start off the day strong and to end without letting those worries and anxieties creep up into me and steal from my sleep. So, this inhale and extend, very simple. You can lie down, you can sit, you can do whatever you like. I do it a lot when I'm driving in the car. There's no perfect posture needed. You just breathe. So, you start with an inhale. And when I do that, I do try to engage open chest, shoulders down the back, long cervical spine. And I take a nice fluid inhale, filling my lungs with air. And I visually try to think of my lungs filling. And I hold it at the top. And then I hold that for 4 counts. So I hold the breath at the top for 4 and 3 and 2 and 1. And then I will exhale for 8 counts, really like wringing out my lungs, right? Like every breath. So I'm doubling essentially the exhale, although I've held for 8, I exhale or lift for 4, hold for 4, and exhale for 8. And then I repeat that. And typically I do that about 4 times. So inhale for 4. You don't have to hold the 4 if you don't want you to. You could easily just inhale for 4 and exhale for 8. But the goal here is an elongated exhale, which helps you to stimulate your vagus nerve, which helps you to get out of that fight or flight and get into the rest and digest, your parasympathetic nervous system triggers, and we're in a state of more controlled, calm, and less chaos, right? So these are things that you can do every day to kind of just reset and to refocus and to reignite. But I think the one takeaway is if you practice this on a consistent basis, just like we practice our every technique in the world for dance, right? We practice your turns, you practice your pliés, your tendus, all of the basics in dance. You practice them so that they can be utilized later in conjunction with other moves, right? For a performance or whatever it is. If you practice breath work every day and you're like, I don't need it, I'm fine, I don't feel stressed, but still practice it, okay, every day. When you do need it, it's like it's right there for you.
Yeah.
It is right there for you. So I highly recommend dancers to use breath work. I teach my children how to do breath work. my Pilates clients, everybody. Breath is so important. I just had a podcast yesterday. One of the women and I was a member of Beachbody, and she was like, "It wasn't until I started working out with you that I even you cue breath like crazy." I'm like, just like you. I'm like, yes, because it's so powerful. Like, and a lot of the times you are holding your breath without even realizing it, right? So when that is one thing that I can highly recommend is just really lean into the power of breath work. And read just if you're reading anything in the book, read that chapter and really understand how pivotal it can be in your life.
I couldn't help myself, but as you were describing your breathwork practice, I was doing it for, I mean,
Yes.
no one's watching this unless they're on YouTube, but that was what I was doing. And
You
it's,
feel it.
yeah, absolutely.
Yeah.
Box breathing is usually my go-to.
I love that's my second. So
Yeah.
I those are my two. Box breathing is my second.
Love that. And I can't help, maybe because I want to use my
The
hand
4 count. Yeah.
around my face. Um, Interesting that you stretch in conjunction with that morning and night. Now, I'm going to have listeners that go, what does that look like? I mean, it's
Mhm.
such a typical dance student question. They will go, what exactly are you doing? Are you sitting
Yes,
on the side
yes.
of your bed? Have you got a yoga mat next to your bed? Do you do it in the lounge room? Like, I want specifics.
Absolutely. So let's talk about that. First of all, I did record a series of workouts and stretches that correlate with the book. So if you purchase the book, you get free access to the workouts and the stretches because I'm a dancer brain. I was like, I need to have a visual, right? Like I need to see exactly what's happening here. So you
Love
can see that. But let's talk about the breath and coordination with stretching. So stretching is like the second thing I do every single morning. So I typically wake up, I will breathe sometimes before my head even comes off the pillow. I just lay there and I breathe my 4 breaths, and then I will sit up and I will carry on that same breath series while I do a forward fold. So if these are my legs, this is my head, I will fold forward, reaching my hands towards my toes, rolling the head, allowing that, again, that cervical spine, and also through the lower back, because no matter how great we sleep in terms of if you could have the best ergonomic mattress in the world, you're still going to wake up and feel
Mm.
what we feel, right? Our body's been idle all night. There is things that are happening internally that we need to wake up. We need to get the body flowing. And so I do a forward fold, and then I sit up and I always go into lateral flexion from there. So I go into nice side reach with the arm open, a little cactus arm here just to get a little bit of that chest expansion. And same with the side. So it's an inhale, 2, 3, 4. I'll hold 2, 3, 4, and exhale for 8. Same type of thing. So the goal is to really focus on spinal flexibility and mobility in the morning. And of course, you're going to feel those hamstrings a little bit. Now, in the evenings, my go-to is I sit on the bed and I also have like a PEMF mat that I use, which is a electromagnetic field little mat that I'm obsessed with. And I put my red light hat on. I mean, I'm a sight to behold at night, let me tell you.
Love it.
And then I sit on my mat and I stretch and I breathe. And I that is a little bit more focused on flexibility to me. So in the morning, it's like just get things moving, just get the juices flowing, focus on the breath, focus on gratitude, like what I'm going to get out of the day, set the mood. At night, I do the same thing, but I do focus like I go into the splits, like a center split, a side split. I still want to be able to do my splits even though I'm not using it. And I also want to focus on hip mobility and all of that. So I do those type of movements, but then what I started to do, this was years ago, was I started to, I mean, when I was going through some challenging times, I found night to be just so challenging. Like the scaries would come in and I would overthink everything and I couldn't sleep anymore. And I was like, I got to get these thoughts out without pushing them away. And I'm not a big meditator. So I was like, what can I do? So I started to focus on the breath again. So I breathe and I was like, on the inhale, I'm going to acknowledge the worry, whatever it is. Like, I'm worried about this event tomorrow. And then on the exhale, I'm going to release that worry and let it, and just tell myself, like, you're going to get through it. It won't seem that big in a couple days and it will be handled. Not tonight. Not tonight, Andrea. And exhale it out. And I would do that a series of breaths until I felt like I had acknowledged the things that were holding on to my heart or like holding on to my soul and bringing me down. And I release. And that's kind of like my go-to bedtime routine now. I breathe, I stretch, and I release.
Yeah, I love that. And it's so true. When you're going to sleep, what can you do about those worries? Nothing. So, sorry.
The best thing you can do is get a great night's sleep so that you're equipped and prepared for the next day to handle what comes your way.
Absolutely. Now, Andrea, we've kind of barely even spoken about this, but I think it's a really important topic to just touch on your transition from dancer to entrepreneur,
Yes.
because a dance career is famously short. So,
Yes.
um, love you to sort of quickly talk about that transition.
Sure. So, as I mentioned, I went to college, got my degree, took a little break in between to dance, and then did a little professional dancing in between. And then after graduating, I'm like, okay, well, I have to be an adult now. I have to get an adult job. So I'm going to find something creative because I have to be creative. And so I found a job at this advertising agency in Boca Raton, Florida. I lasted 6 weeks. I was like, I discovered very early on, I am not meant to sit behind a desk and work for someone in that type of setting. Just wasn't for me. So I started to give some thought about what career could I go into that involved movement. I taught dance since I was 12 years old, so I was just kind of done teaching dance at that point. And so my husband at the time was like, "What about the Pilates thing that you do and you love so much?" I'm like, "Oh, right,
Pilates
that
thing.
Pilates thing that you do." Um, and I was like, "That's a great idea." So I went full on. I took a year, did a comprehensive classical certification on all the equipment, loved it, like fell in love with it. Many dancers fall in love with Pilates because it just makes sense for our bodies and the science behind Pilates makes sense. And I do believe that Pilates is like the foundation of movement. When you learn Pilates, everything you do, whether you're a dancer, an ice skater, a hockey player, a football player, everything's better. Um,
Absolutely.
and so I fell in love with Pilates. I started teaching about a year back then when you wanted to teach Pilates, you couldn't just get a weekend certification and start teaching. You actually had to like know what you were doing. And it took a year for our certification. I couldn't even touch a body or teach a body for a year. And now all these studios, but that's another topic.
Oh,
Um,
honestly, I know
that's-
because people ask me all the time, what can I do that's complementary to my ballet training that's, outside of the studio? And I say, well, Pilates. And it's the only thing I do now. I have my once a week Pilates class that I go and do.
yes,
But I say to my students, just be really mindful and careful because I know what a good Pilates class feels like. But if you
you
got
bet.
time, yeah, that's a whole nother topic.
That could be a whole nother podcast. So anyhow, yes, so Pilates came into my life and I loved it. I started teaching it, but I was also missing the choreography element in dance. So after a few years of teaching Pilates, and I was working one-on-one with clients a lot, I started to sprinkle in dance moves at the ladder barrel, which is a Pilates apparatus. And I was like, well, this is a ballet bar. Let's do some pliés and some tendus. And at the time, bar workouts were just starting to take off, primarily in New York City and Los Angeles, not really in South Florida, but I had a lot of clients from New York City. And so I approached the studio owner. I was like, I want to do this. I can do this with the Pilates spin. Like I want to add Pilates foundations to bar workouts because right now everyone's calling this dance moves and all they're doing is doing a baby plie and there is no real big movement. And I want to move the body like a dancer does, but be cognizant of the Pilates principles. So decided to do a class. I mean, it took me a few months. I put it together, launched it, it took off. Then that turned into a license model. Then that turned into a franchise model. Then that turned into expansion to Australia and international. And that's kind of how it just snowballed. It started by just one class that went really well, took off, and then I surrounded myself with really incredible individuals, primarily women, who believed in the method, who loved and fell in love with it, who were far smarter than me and knew more than me and helped me to grow the business.
Mm, I love that. It's just, yeah, it's one of the reasons why I followed your journey and was just so inspired from, my early 20s. So, it is quite weird, actually, I must admit, sitting here. I mean, it is 5 a.m. here in Australia. So
Yes.
brain- my brain is a little bit mushy, but just having you sit in front of me right now is just bizarre, just
Oh,
FYI.
I love that. I love that.
Um, we've spoken actually a lot about discipline and a lot about how our dance training sort of, flows into our everyday lives. And it's really funny. I just remembered then I was watching one of your videos, sorry, one of your stories,
Yeah.
and you were talking about this is so long ago, like your girls were tiny,
Mm.
and you were like, oh, and I mean, I didn't have a child at the time, and you were talking about how you're packing washing, you're folding washing, and you were like, if I just get it done now, this is the secret to my success. Like before I go to bed, I wake up to a nice clean house and I can focus on cooking the girls' breakfast. And yes, I did watch you way too many times making
I
scrambled
love
with
that.
your girls.
Yes, yes.
Um, and you said, if I just get it done now, my morning is set up, blah, blah, blah.
Yep, yep.
And I watched that years and years and years ago. And then I was literally like about to, dump some washing in the laundry now with a 2-year-old. And
Uh-huh.
wait
So
a
different.
second. I was like, wait a second. Andrea said to fold my washing before I go to bed. And religiously now, like that just
Oh
popped into
my
my
God, I
brain
love
like
that.
many years later, like 5 years later. And I'm like,
Ah.
so I make sure all that washing's put away. So I wake up with a fresh.
And you feel good when you go at night because it's not on your mind. Like it's not another thing on the to-do list that you're not getting done.
So I th randomly think about you a lot.
I love that.
Anyway, so no, you've made a big
Thank you.
impact on my life. So I can imagine how many lives you have impacted without realizing it in such a positive way. You're just such a bubbling, full of energy, vibrant, beautiful woman. And honestly, just it's it's just a pleasure to watch. So
Oh,
thank
that hit
you.
my heart. Thank you very much. I mean, that's can't ask for anything more than that.
So when your book came out and the title like small, oh my gosh, I said small boobs, small moves.
Someone else said that before. You're not the only one. A couple of people did that. We laughed so
You
hard.
know,
Yep,
you know what it is? When you read the title, it's
with the
like
B.
the bee's so big, you're like, oh, small boobs.
Love it. Any
But
size boobs, big life.
absolutely, absolutely. We love them all. When I've read the subheading to supercharge your energy, productivity, and happiness, like I was like, yes, that is just Andrea in a nutshell. Absolutely.
I'm so glad you
Now,
said that.
final question. Oops, see, I'm not used to 5 a.m. interviews. There's my alarm going off. Now, I always finally finish with a question. What does balance look like for you? What's one thing that you're just, I mean, besides I'm going to set a caveat. You're not allowed to say breath work or stretching because we've already spoken about
Yes,
that.
yes.
Being the Balanced Ballerinas podcast, what is something that keeps you balanced?
I would say that something that keeps me balanced is a mindset philosophy that I've had for probably most of my life without knowing it. Um, I've always been the kind of person I remember as a young kid sitting in a hammock in my parents' backyard and looking up at the trees and just being fascinated by the leaves and the contrast of the green to the blue sky and just feeling like, oh, I'm so lucky to see this. It's so beautiful. And as I've gotten older in my life and I've started to realize, the challenges that come with life can also make things feel cloudy. Um, I've leaned into a mindset I call extraordinary ordinary. And and my girls hear me talk about it all the time. And I will reference just the everyday things in our life that we tend to take for granted or don't feel as meaningful because they're not as big and shiny or whatever it is that we're looking for to fulfill ourselves. And so that has kept me balanced. Like every time I'm going through a hard time and I want to go into that woe is me, I'm like, but really, like let's have perspective here. Let's find the extraordinary in the ordinary. And some days are ordinary, and some days are extraordinary ordinary, but they're every day if you just kind of put on those glasses. And so I try to keep my extraordinary ordinary glasses on as much as I can and see everything that is so unique and so beautiful and so everyday. Um, that has helped me to find my balance in life.
Absolutely. I love that. Something I say to my students, and I'm going to say to my son when he understands, is if you have sparkling water in your life, you're doing okay. Life's pretty extraordinary.
Oh, I love that. That's a good one.
When you think of it, it's so true. If you've got
It
sparkling
is
water, which yes, even actually my 2-year-old is obsessed with because my mum, his nanny,
the
introduced him.
bubbles.
And now it's like sparkling water, mommy. And I'm like, oh my God, everyone thinks I'm raising this
Oh
little.
my God. I love it though. That's such a good analogy. You're right. If you have sparkling water in your life, not much, don't complain too much, right? Yeah.
Well, look,
Hopefully not much to
small.
complain about.
By the time this episode comes out, Small Moves Big Life, which is 7 daily practices to supercharge your energy, productivity, and happiness, which is just so you, like I said, it will be out and on bookshelves and Amazon and all the places you can get your books. So, again, thank you so much, Andrea, for taking the time to speak to the Balanced Ballerinas community. They're going to love this conversation. And like I said before we started recording, there's so many bar teachers that are part of the community. So, they are going to absolutely love this.
This is one of my favorites yet. So I love being here. Thank you so much.
Thank you, Andrea.